Welcome. I'm Carl Frederick, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project of the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I have worked in newspapers for more than 40 years as an editor and a reporter. 38 and a half of those years were at the Kenosha News. I am also a member of the Kenosha County Historical Society Board. We hope you enjoy these programs. I'm speaking with Tamarra Coleman, Executive Director of the Shalom Center, and Wendy Cross, Community Center Director. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
So, Tamarra, tell me your background in getting to the Shalom Center.
Sure. So I've been at the Shalom Center for 8 years. Actually, this month, February 16th, marked my 8th year. And before that, I was in the corporate world for 20 years at a company in Lake County, and came to Shalom Center. And I started off at the Shalom Center as the Director of Programs and Operations. And then after 2 years, I became the Executive Director. And it's been a great journey.
Okay. And what is your background prior to that? You're a Kenosha native?
Absolutely. Born and raised in Kenosha. I'm a K-Town girl to the end. Born and raised, have 3 daughters, and we all raised my kids in Kenosha with my husband. And I love our community. It is such an amazing place to raise your family. Good education, good people, a great community. And so, but I'm born and raised here. And the only time I didn't live here is when I went to college at UW-Whitewater. But I still made Kenosha my home.
Okay. And Wendy, what about your background?
So this spring, I will actually be with the Shalom Center 21 years. I started as a shelter supervisor in our old building on 62nd Street. So on the 3rd floor of our old building is where I started as a shelter supervisor with the Shalom Center. And then I worked my way up to shelter manager, and then shelter programs director, and now community resource center director.
Okay, fine. Tell me a little bit about the beginnings of the Shalom Center. How did it begin, and what did it do originally?
So originally, the Shalom Center was just a soup kitchen. That's how it kind of got its foundation. The founder, Greta Hansen, and her group of individuals that supported her, it was all about soup kitchen and serving the low income and the homeless population through a soup kitchen efforts. And it just kind of kept evolving, which is really interesting, Carl, because it became just soup. Then it was like soup in a sandwich. And then it became, soup sandwich in a full meal. And then, she started seeing, her and her partner started seeing, the homeless population really growing within our community.
Could you tell me what year it was that it was started?
So 1982 was when Shalom Center started.
Okay.
So we just celebrated our 42nd year. And so
where is it located, or where was it located?
Well, it started in churches. And then for a little bit, it was in the CYC, the Christian Youth Center on 52nd for a little bit. But churches and the faith-based community was really our stepping ground. They really supported our efforts. All of the faith-based churches really partnered with us and had a lot of soup kitchens in their basements of their churches. Then when we went to CYC, it definitely became an area where we started to see a lot of shelter, homeless individuals. And I think quickly, Greta, and I don't want to speak for her, but I could just see her saying, we need a shelter. We've got to start sheltering people. And I can see Wendy nodding. We need a shelter for people. Working with the city, we got the Deming School, which Wendy mentioned earlier. It was on 67th and 63rd, excuse me. And what was funny is a little joke. It was a 100-year-old school, and shelter was only enough room for shelter, Carl, was upstairs of the school, which was just for families. So think about the classrooms of a school, and that's where the families lived, inside those classrooms. So when I started at the Shalom Center, way after Wendy, when I got there, when you walk into the bedrooms of the residents that were living there, there were chalkboards, old-fashioned, big, long blackboards in the room where you could actually use chalk on the boards. It was kind of interesting. The kids would play on the chalk with the chalkboard and draw things in the room. But it was an old school. And so think about an old school, 100-year-old school. So downstairs, when you first walked in the building, you had a cafeteria area and a kitchen. That was our soup kitchen. The cafeteria is where people went and sat. But remember, it was an elementary school. It was kind of built like an elementary school, what we would say today is an elementary school. But back then, it was probably all grades.
Okay.
And the offices that we had for like our finance or our case managers were like storage units. They were like closets, and because there weren't a lot of educators, it was just the teachers in their classrooms. But it was amazing that we were able to stay in that building for as long as we did,
Okay.
and really take care of the community.
Okay. Wendy, would you like to talk a little bit about how the shelter worked?
So the shelter worked is at first we had 7 rooms. And so each room was of different size. And like she said, they were old classrooms. So they had the slate, old fashioned, neat chalkboards. So the rooms were, they were very unique and very neat. They had some had closets, some had just little neat nook areas. So each family had their own room. And then a family was able to stay for 30 days at that time. And they had chores they had to do twice a day. They had classes they had to attend. Case managers they had to meet.
What kind of classes did they attend?
Oh, so at that time we had nutrition classes, parenting classes through KUSD. UW Parkside had the nutrition classes. There also was a classroom. KUSD had a actual teacher that had a classroom in the basement. So after the kids would go to school during the day, then at night from I believe it was from 3 until 6 at night.
Yeah.
The teacher would teach them in the classroom downstairs, which was absolutely amazing little classroom they had. They had tutors. Each child had a tutor with them, so they were able to get the kids at grade level and a lot of times above grade level. We were so lucky to have that program. It was an outstanding, amazing program we
Now,
had.
how was all this organized with different churches and Parkside and KUSD, Kenosha Unified?
It magically all came together with the amazing staff that we had at the time. I really can't even, it just came together. And it all worked. And it was a lot of hard work put into it.
What would the families do after 30 days?
At that time, after 30 days, amazingly, it was very easy to find a place to rent. And at that time, when a lot of families were on W-2, and the W-2, I think, was like $564, I can attest that you were able to find an apartment within no time, within days, and get an apartment and move into your own place.
And that was a 2-bedroom apartment that you could find?
Well, it depends anywhere from 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, sometimes 3-bedroom.
Okay.
At that time, they were.
Tell me a little
Carl,
bit.
and if I could just add,
Sure.
Carl, that was the families, but we also had singles that were going from church to church to church. That was our INS program, which is Individuals Needing Nightly Shelter, which we still have today in our new facility on 39th. But our INS was going from church to church to church each night. So you have your singles going to the churches, and then our families staying in the shelter in the Shalom Center in our facility.
So let's talk about how a lot of this evolved from a soup kitchen to a shelter for families to an INS program at individual churches for individuals to food pantry and all the other things that the Shalom Center is known for. Walk me through how those programs evolved.
Okay, Wendy, do you want me to take that one? Okay, so I had already mentioned earlier how we went from the soup kitchen, soup and a salad, all that kind of things, right? So now we're in this Deming school, we're evolving because we now need shelter for individuals. So we're partnering with our faith-based churches, going from church to church for our INS. That went on for quite some time, and it wasn't until about 1992 that we needed a food pantry. And so a food pantry was evolved in the lower level of the Deming school, which is where we were located. So you had your shelter on the top level, our soup kitchen in the middle level, and then obviously the lower level was our pantry. Now we're talking about a 100-year-old school. So their handicap accessibility was a challenge, right? We didn't have it. So if someone needed assistance with getting the pantry food, they would go down these stairs, they would get their food, and then go back up the other side of the building upstairs, and then out the door. So we had a lot of volunteers that were assisting us with getting clients in and out of the building, assisting them with their groceries. That lasted only for about 2 or 3 years, Carl, before we realized that the demand was so great. So we partnered again with the city, looked for a building, and then that is how our food pantry came about in about 1994 over on 80th Street. So on 80th and the Sheridan Road, we had our first food pantry building. It's about 8,000 square foot of space was our pantry store and our warehouse. That is when we really began to evolve our pantry by sourcing our own food, going to our partners and getting groceries. And then we just kept evolving in the pantry world.
Okay,
But
so,
while that was all going on, I'll stop.
oh, no, that's okay.
Okay.
How did the food pantry get its food? How did it
Sure.
disperse the food to
Sure.
whomever? And how did the soup kitchen function? How many people were involved with making the soup kitchen work?
Sure. So again, our soup kitchen, we had a staff of a chef who would come in and cook. Probably about 3 or 4 staff were on staff for the soup kitchen, a chef and then some support staff. We had volunteers from our community. Community members were volunteering to serve the food each night. So we would have a different group or a different organization or a different company or different individuals from our community that would come in and actually help us serve the food. All of our food for the soup kitchen came from our food pantry. So through partnerships and through our directors at the time, we're working with different organizations within our community. We are in southeastern Wisconsin and we are very food rich. There's a lot of companies, you know, Sam's Club, Walmart, Meijer. There's a lot of partners out there that were supporting our food pantry with food, grocery stores, Kenosha beef, all of that. It's just helping us keep our shelves stocked. We also work with our local state commodities food, getting state governmental food to help stock our shelves as well. People would come in, they would grocery shop. We're a self-select free choice pantry, meaning that you come into the doors and you go up and down the aisles and you get the food of your choice based on your family size. That was a great way to do it. We didn't have a lot of waste because people were actually picking what they needed versus what we would stock in a box for them. And so our pantry continued to evolve. Our shelter program continued to grow, unfortunately, because we don't want that to grow. And then our soup kitchen just kept evolving. We did that kind of consistently for like 30 years, Carl, or so, between the pantries and the soup kitchen. And it wasn't until 2017, when we were able to finally get a building. Our directors were amazing at the time, and we were able to solidify through some grant funding and our wonderful community supporting us, a building. And that's our current location on 39th and 45th, right in Kenosha. We were able to take the old building, ATC leasing old building on 39th and gut that out. And on September 11th, 2018, we had our first night of shelter, first night of opening. And the interesting thing about that, Carl, was for the first time, all of our shelter programs were under one roof. So our families, and we had 8 families that we could take. And then we're an 82 bed facility. So our numbers fluctuate based on how many singles we had on the single side. And I'm telling you, it was an amazing night to be able to have our singles, our individuals, and our families all in one building with all of our case managers. We were able to just really serve differently, because in the END program before, you're going from church to church. So you're getting there at 7 p.m. and you have to leave at 7 a.m. And then hopefully you'll make your appointment at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with your case manager. Well, now you're just around the corner. Now you're just down the hall. Now you're just through a door where we can go right over there and grab you for your case manager meeting. It really changed the way we were delivering services. But it just didn't stop there, because our soup kitchen was now also in that location where we could actually serve even more people. The one piece that we were missing though, Carl, was our pantry was still over on 80th and Sheridan Road. And so we couldn't even really get comfortable, Wendy, right? Before we had an opportunity through an anonymous donor to relocate our pantry to our 39th Avenue location. We had some land back there. It was the perfect spot. And that was amazing. We knew right off the bat when that building would come up, that we were going to be able to no longer have to go across town to get the food for our shelter or for our soup kitchen. We could just go down the hall again. So we're creating efficiencies. So on March 2nd, 2020, we had our ribbon cutting for our pantry at our current location. And then we could truly say, for the first time in the history of Shalom Center, every one of our programs that we offered were in one building.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about how many people were served at the beginning, how it grew over time? Wendy, can you answer a little bit about how the numbers started and how they grew from there?
Well, the numbers in the beginning, I don't know if Tamarra would have more of a, from the beginning to how we grew. I know that when we were on 62nd Street, we had promised that we would and when we moved, we had promised that we would put soup kitchens in, like the soup kitchen networks in the area, so that the people that were in that area, because we served a lot of people from the neighborhoods, we had a lot of neighborhood people that we served in the soup kitchen. So we had promised that we would keep soup kitchen networks in and around that area so those people could get the food, for soup kitchen that they needed each night. So as far as numbers, I think Tamarra, you would be able to tell us better on with the numbers, how they grew more. And
Yeah, our numbers really grew over time. I'll start with shelter first. So I remember I remember having a meeting with the then director, Dr. Lynn Bees Carroll, who was our executive director, who helped us move into the new building. And I have to tell you, I remember we kind of chuckled. It was a chuckle of amazement, because we originally only planned, Carl, for like 10 women on the women's side of the individual shelter. The first night we had 20 women. We couldn't understand where the women had been. Where were the other 10? Because we had the 10 consistent, and then we doubled the very first night of shelter. We couldn't figure out how. So after, of course, analyzing it, trying to figure out spacing and making sure we had enough beds for men and women, and just, whatever we needed to do, we quickly realized that women in the church basements may have not felt safe. You're laying on a mat on the floor at the church, and there's not a lot of room for separation all the time, depending on the church. And so we think women just didn't feel safe, especially if they have their own anxiety from their own trauma. We just thought maybe coming into a physical shelter, they felt a little bit more safer. And so our numbers doubled quickly. So that's one thing that I can tell you that really was eye-opening for us. And we have been consistent with 20 women, 21, 25, maybe every single night of sheltering since we opened our doors with all the sheltering together. And then we constantly are full. There is very rarely ever a night that we don't have room. I mean, we have a waiting list, and I hate to call it a waiting list, but we have a diversion specialist who takes calls every single day, all day, on people that are looking for shelter or some types of assistance, rental assistance. I'm going to be evicted in 2 weeks and need help now. We get all those calls. And so, but our pantry really has evolved. Our pantry numbers have tremendously grown. I mean, we would easily see 120 people in a day, maybe sometimes 240 a week in our old pantry. We're seeing that in every session twice a week.
But that must have something to do with the current status of circumstances of people.
Absolutely. I think as our economy continues to be the way it is, and the inflation, we're seeing the need be even greater. But Carl, what's interesting is that, Wendy's been here much longer than I have been, but when you look at over time and you can always pinpoint it to our economy. When Wendy was saying earlier how rental. It was so easy to move people out after 30 days out of shelter to be able to get an apartment really quick. Well, let's fast forward, and we're talking just like 10 years. We struggle finding accessible, affordable housing for our individuals. And we're talking about our residents who work every day, who
That's
have,
what I was going to get at.
yeah, they
When we
work every
talk about
day.
homeless, we're not talking about unemployed necessarily.
No, we're talking about 60 to 70% of our residents go to work every single day. And mind you, the ones that don't go either have a very severe mental illness, undiagnosed, untreated, right? Unmedicated, or they're in transition, and so they're looking for work. But it's such a small group of people. But we're seeing persistent, very high levels of individuals right now who are struggling, and it makes it very difficult for us to get them housed. We have a housing first philosophy at the Shalom Center: get people housed, and then we can continue to provide wraparound services for them. But if we can't get you housed, we're still going to do the wraparound services. But your mind is on, I need to be sheltered. I need a place to live, and we can't deliver that right away like we used to be able to do it so fast. And so we work very hard in trying to get people turned over fast in shelter, get them out of shelter, get them out of the system, and get them into their own place where we can then continue to provide wraparound services.
Tell me, you have gone into the shelter, the pantry, and the homelessness issue. You also created, Wendy said she was a community service center director. What is the service center director do?
Oh my gosh, this is funny. I'm gonna let Wendy talk, but this is like very near and dear to me.
That's her baby.
Yeah, it is. It's been really hard. I love the whole pub, but I'll let Wendy talk about the whole pub.
So we opened our Hope Hub March 1st of last year, so 2024, we opened our Hope Hub. And what our Hope Hub does is for the unsheltered. So there's a lot of people that are unsheltered in the community, and some of them want to not be in shelter, or we have people that aren't in shelter yet and can't get into shelter yet. And so what this is it's a one-stop shop for them to get the services they need to stay connected with the community and move on and get to their next best place. So we offer showers, we offer laundry, computer services, case management if they need it. And we also have our diversion JoJo here, specialist here, who is the first person that they would see to try to either get into shelter or find a better place for them to go so they don't have to go into shelter. Because ultimately, you don't want them to be in shelter if they don't have to, if there's another alternative for them. So we are a one-stop shop resource center. So the objective is to not have to send people all over the different community places for services. They can come here and get the services they need all in one. So that's what we do Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 4:30.
But what about medical care or dentistry, or does that go through you as well, or how does that?
Well, we can certainly get them connected with the services they need. We do offer. We have workshops here where we have community partners that come in, and they provide health screenings. We have job services come in and do job interviews with people. Flu shots, all different kinds of services we have that want to come in and do whole different activities and stuff for the people in need.
Do you find?
Carl,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that we witnessed during COVID was there were a lot of people in our community that did not know where to go for services. It might have been first time people that needed services. So yes, Wendy is absolutely correct. This is about the unsheltered, but we also wanted to create an environment of when she says a one-stop shop, when people need services, whatever that may look like, if you need health and human service support, we want to be that first, per place that you go, and then we can tell you where to go. We can connect you to those services in a very holistic approach. So we know who the partners are. We know what they do in the community. So when you mentioned medical and dental, hopefully that will be our phase 2 of the Hope Hub, is continuing to partner with Kenosha Community Health Center, Pillar Health, who can now come in and have a space in our building to do medical and dental checks. We do a little bit of it now. We're dibble dabbling a little bit, right? Testing the water. But hopefully in phase 2, we can like actually have a spot for them to come in and actually do the services on spot. And so it's also nice because our Hope Hub is in between our shelter and our food pantry and our soup kitchen. It's kind of like right in the middle. And what happens is people that go to our food pantry can now come out, come inside. And if they need support or resources or references someplace, they can now get access to the Hope Hub as well. Same thing with our soup kitchen. So it's just a really great community resource area where people can come in and say, I don't know where to go. And Wendy and her team can direct them and make phone calls for them and get them connected right away.
It sounds as if you're trying to build relationships, not just among partners, but with the people that you serve.
Absolutely. And I would love to tell, two years ago a year ago in January, we do what's called a point in time. It's a nationwide homeless count that we have to do. And the community comes together and supports this initiative. And we go out overnight, Carl, between midnight and 4 a.m., 3 a.m. And we actually look for the homeless to give them resources, to bring them into shelter, to get them off the streets. And I'm reminded of last year, January, when we went out to a certain area, and there's a gentleman that we see every time we do the point in time. We do it twice a year, July and January. Wendy, every time we would see him, kept trying to get this gentleman to come into shelter. He refused every single time. But when you talk about relationships and trust, he all of a sudden started showing up at the Hope Hub. And because he trusted Wendy, and you're building that relationship. He wouldn't come into shelter, but we knew he needed to. He wouldn't. And all of a sudden, a bed opened. We asked him, and he said yes. And so he's in shelter, getting the support he needs and getting transitioned out correctly into the community. And again, it took years. Like, was it 2 or 3 years, Wendy, we kept? Yeah. And it
was 3 years. Yeah.
3 years, Carl, before he would trust Wendy, not me, not any other team, Wendy, to actually come into shelter. So that makes a difference when you're building relationships and people can see consistency. They see the same people, and we keep, even though they're not ready, when they're ready, they know that they can come, and they know we're going to be right there waiting for them. And that's what we're building, is trust in relationships.
So let's talk a little bit about the homeless that you find during your point in time. How many beds you have for housing? How do those numbers relate?
So I'm going to give you a couple different numbers, and Wendy can correct me, but we're an 82 bed facility. Okay. And we can also take 8 families. We're normally 99.9% full of the time, Carl, right? So when point in time happens, it's really important for us to partner with our support partners, like, for instance, Kenosha Human Development Services, who has another program, which is motel hotel voucher program. And so when we're on the streets looking for people, trying to get them into services, sometimes they don't want to come. And I'm talking about below zero weather, and they're on the streets and they don't want to come into shelter. We're still giving them resources. We're still giving them a sleeping bag. We're still giving them food and trying to say, please come in. But the interesting thing is we do have some that will come with us, and they can go into the hotel motel vouchers program until a bed opens up in shelter. And but the good news is they're getting into our coordinated entry, which is our without boring you with all of our lingo, but that's our kind of our management system to be able to get them connected to services before they actually get into shelter. And so we have a no wrong door approach. So if you hit any of our partners, the Sharing Center out in the county, Women's and Children's Horizon, Kenosha Human Development Services, those are our homeless partners. And we all work off the same system. We're all talking to each other. And so this allows us to kind of capture the data, get people connected to services. We know who's on the street. We know who's in shelter. We know we have it all. And but what's interesting is we don't always have enough space for everybody. And do I think we should build another shelter? No, I think we need better services. I think we need more accessible, affordable housing, because we've got people in shelter that we can move out quickly, but there's no units
Yeah,
available.
well,
for
let's
them.
talk about affordable housing. You mentioned, Wendy, back in what, 20 years ago or so, an apartment could be found within days for $560 or so dollars
Yeah,
a
yep,
month.
yep,
And these people have jobs,
yep.
but the rent today is generally what, and what are they earning?
Sure. We're looking, I believe the fair market for a studio apartment was $1,000 right now. I believe a one bedroom was 1,200. I was doing some research today, printing out apartments for people, and I seen some 2 or 3 bedroom apartments for $2,400 today.
WIDA has
So,
on WIDA's website, you can look at the fair market value of rental properties for each county in the state of Wisconsin. And when you look at Kenosha for 2024, and honestly, Carl, it comes out every year in 2025, and I've been too scared to look at 2025. 2024 for a 2-bedroom fair market, which is what the affordable housing units use as their guide, was $1,401 for 2024. That is for a 2-bedroom fair market value rental property. Again, I'm too scared to look at 2025 because I already know that it's gone up.
How does that compare to the surrounding counties?
Great. I'm so glad that you asked. Racine was $1,200 and Milwaukee was $1,150. And Lake County was about the same, if not a little bit less.
Then what?
We've been asking the county and the city forever, what makes, I mean, we ask ourselves as well, what makes Kenosha so unique that our rental properties are that high?
Now, and what would it take someone in a job to be able to afford $1,400 a month?
A lot of money. So the Alice report that comes out each year through United Way shows that a household would need to be making about $60,000 to $70,000 a year to be able to afford to live in Kenosha. So you can also look at the Wisconsin Forum policy. They did a study for Kenosha Area Business Alliance last year. That report came out last year, and that report will show you, Carl, Kenosha County did very well in bringing jobs to Kenosha. We are like booming it throughout the state compared to the state. But when you look at the types of jobs that we brought and the amount of income people are bringing in, it's not conducive to the amount of rental fees.
So the
Even single
wages aren't
family
as high
homes.
as the rental properties cost.
Pardon me?
I said that the income they earn isn't as high as what the rental cost is.
Correct. And so these reports are telling our county and our city that, we're doing well in economic development. We're just not doing well in accessible, affordable housing, and not just units. Let me be very clear. This isn't about low income. I mean, it is, but it's about units, because I believe in a housing for all philosophy as well. And so we have a unit challenge in Kenosha, which ultimately impacts our low income families. But we have a shortage of units in single family homes all across the city in the county of Kenosha. So don't get me wrong, this isn't just about building affordable, accessible housing units. It's about units and single family homes that are affordable for people. And if people that are in rental apartments, if they can't afford to get out of those apartments and buy their first home, because there's either they can't afford it, or there are no units, not enough units, those apartment buildings don't come available, which impact some of our clients that can't get into those units.
So is
So
this the next challenge for the Shalom Center?
I don't know.
Or whose challenge is it?
I think it's a city and it's everyone's challenge. It's all of our challenge. It's your challenge too, Carl.
Well, I should sell my house and
It's
have nowhere to go,
you know
and I
what?
can come and see you.
Yeah, I mean, Wendy and I have done some research. We've sat in some workshops. CABA puts on a lot of workshops, and I remember one of their workshops was through Inspire, one of their leadership conferences, and they talk about a holistic approach to solving some of these challenges. And one of the presenters talked about how you've got to get all parties involved, Carl. You got to get the city, the county, the builders, the banks, the nonprofits, the for-profits, everyone has to be at the table. And I will say some work is being done in the city and the county to kind of combat this challenge, but we're so far behind. It's going to take us years to get caught up, but they're working on it. But while you're working on it, people's lives are being impacted. So that's just always in the back of our minds, because we see firsthand the individuals looking them in their face every day that they can't move out, right? The data on a piece of paper, it looks great, but we're looking at people's eyes and their families that are living in our shelter that cannot move out. And that's different than numbers on a piece of paper.
So the work of the Shalom Center has a lot of security. It'll be going on for a while.
It does, Carl, and we're here to stay. And Wendy always has a little statement. It's so funny, and I love her statement. Go ahead, Wendy. I'll let you say it.
I said, we don't stop. We can't. We can't. We don't stop. We just have to keep going and move forward, move ahead.
We won't stop.
Possibilities are endless. We won't stop. Possibilities are endless.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carl. We appreciate you.